Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is October 2, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Christian Roy. Christian, where are you calling in from?
From Montreal.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. The first question is what is the best thing for a human being?
Uh, to 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 seek truth and to make an inkling of it and to follow it.
You broke up a little. I heard to seek and then repeat what you said.
Truth.
Oh,
Truth.
truth. That's a beautiful word. I'll do a divert right off the bat. Louis Buñuel says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Any reaction?
Uh, well, it depends what you mean by it. You know, when people get too specific about the it, I guess that would be a danger. But I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for sharing what they've actually found. You know, but it should remain somewhat open ended. Even if it's incredibly profound, that you can tell that it's profound if there is an element of open endedness within it, even, and its applications. But yes and no is my that I'm not against actually finding truth. Yeah.
I like open-endedness because 99% of people, when I say that Buñuel quote, they go, oh, that's great. And then one guy finally said, that's bullshit because I'm going to seek the truth because I want to find it. And,
Exactly.
yeah. And then I follow it up with the cliche is that the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey is more important?
uh, well, we have to point somewhere. It's like I mean, if there isn't some intuition of where to go, probably it's going to get lost into the brambles or fall off a cliff, and that won't go far. It won't be fun. I mean, there is something to be said, for the flaneur, for wandering, but there should be again that kind of open-ended openness to reading little signs and hints and provocations on along the way that lead us somewhere. That probably meet some sort of some faint or unconscious idea of where we want to go or what we actually need, and we have to be quietly guided by that. I think uh, to be a journey worthy of the name. It can't just be aimless wandering. It can wandering is part of it, but it can't be the whole story. Otherwise, it's just Brownian motion.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the word flaneur. I was fishing for that. So you must have ESP. I was like, I hope he says that. So the next question is what is your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Hmm. Well, hmm. Depends what one means by information. It. I well, I think my life changing epiphanies tend to come from film and from a total artwork, and Wagner's operas, and or a film of Wagner's opera, something like that, a kind of
Yeah.
total revelation, where it all fits together, but in a way that you can't entirely put your finger on, but it's kind of self-evidence of an epiphany. Yeah.
I like
And yet
that.
yet it's not void of intellectual content. You don't just lose your mind. On the contrary, things fall together with a clarity that's not just logical. It just, I would call it symbolic. Yeah.
Very
Or
good.
yeah.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Uh, yeah, well, there are different motivations. There's different levels of information. There's just in, there's I guess raw data, and then there's knowledge, and then there's wisdom. And they sort of bleed into each other. They're each made up of each other. So
Is this need or want to collect it more innate or more invented?
I didn't get that.
Is the need or want to collect information more innate in humans or more invented by humans?
Well, it's innate. What does an infant baby or a toddler do? They're collecting information, experiential information all the time, and once they have access to language, it's more. They cast the net ever wider. So it's innate. And even if you're interested in trivial information, well, you can never have enough of it either. So I would say it's innate.
Okay,
Uh, yeah.
that's good. Do thoughts create emotions?
Uh, w- well, they can. I guess sometimes it's the other way around. How do we slice off these aspects of consciousness? They're you can focus on one side of it or another, but I don't think there's such a thing as thought without emotion or emotion without thought.
Yeah, very good. Fill in the blank, Christian. I don't know what I think until I
Often is when I say it.
say it. Wow.
Yeah,
That's McLuhan said, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can
yeah.
can humans think without language?
Uh, well, it depends how one defines thinking. There's certain realizations that may not be verbal that could be thought of as thinking. You know, uh, yeah, it depends on the definition of thinking. I mean, it could be almost equated with consciousness. Then of course, it becomes a tautology. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. We're going to get into consciousness. But first, Chomsky said a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Uh, I'm reminded of what I think would be Gadamer's take of the on the issue is in his hermeneutical thinking that in language there is always a horizon of seeking truth, I suppose, and you can sort of rely on that. That wherever whatever the breakdown is, there's some sort of horizon of truth that is there that you can both aim towards, and even though you come from completely different angles and probably aim in different directions, you can attempt to let that resonate and to sort of attune yourself to that implicit common horizon of thought that is behind all language, that allow people with different languages to eventually be able to communicate. So
Beautiful. Yeah, that
so it's
that
an
word
openness to
resonates.
truth that is at the heart of language. Let's just let that take charge. Yeah.
Yeah, the word resonate, you used a lot of words that communicated to me your thought. I appreciate that. This is a stupid question, and it's definitely both, but your hunch. Are humans more thinking beings or more feeling beings? I know it's both and it depends.
Well, it almost depends on the person, you know. But I guess what defines us as a species is that we do have, you know, we do have this thinking department that's rarely inactive. So
Yeah,
uh,
that reminds me of Bridget Bardot said, "When I make love, I don't think." And I'm like, "Good luck. How can you turn off thinking?" It's like when people say they meditate, they go, "I'm thinking about not thinking."
yeah, yeah. Well, you have to realize that you're thinking about not thinking. That's good enough, you know,
Yeah,
because then that creates an inkling of a distance of another space that's broader than the thinking than the content, you know. uh,
it's good.
then you become aware of the medium, not just as the medium of language, but also the environment, the space beyond language. That you're just a fleeting pattern within that, you know. Yeah.
Beyond language is great. So these two questions, Christian, are from Alan Turing in the 50s. Number one, is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, again, that sounds like a tautology, you know. I mean, if then what I mean, if the soul is human consciousness, I mean, it can never be entirely without thinking. So, and of course, its faculties are you know, belong to it. So, if you remove the faculties of the soul, what are you left with? You know.
Yeah. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
No,
Thank you.
you can process information. That doesn't make them
Yeah.
thinking beings.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning,
There's no right or wrong
happiness
answer.
is optional.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. Thank you. Okay, you touched on consciousness, Christian. This question is, again, it's stupid, but it's basically, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
uh, no, I don't think we're creating it. I think it creates us.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't quite know where it comes from, where it begins, where it ends, but we're sort of a kind of a patternful froth on the surface of consciousness that basically is boundless. You know, it's not limited to our own being, even.
Yeah. That's good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Uh, Probably thought has the potential to be of being instant. Was by definition, speed of light is a speed. You know, that's not instant.
Yeah. Very good. So Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded and said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
Well, these are two different questions. You know, there's a jump between the Reiner statement and the new. You were asking me to come up with new tools, whereas Reiner was asking us to repurpose the existing tools.
Right. Let me explain because that's a great observation. Because what I'm trying to do in these interviews is basically me and you examine the questions and
Yeah.
reword them. So, for a long time, I didn't ask any, I didn't explain it. But then I started saying, I might start the question with a few cute quotes. It doesn't mean you have to apply the quote to the question. So the
Uh-huh.
question is, what new tool do you suggest? And you can even drop the word new. And then
Mhm.
tool implies it's something tangible. So it doesn't have to be tangible. But if you want to, you can apply it to dismantling the master's house.
Mhm.
And then it becomes like, who's the master? So it's really, again, you put it into the context you feel most comfortable with, that you want to explore.
Well, the the crucial tool remains language. It
Yeah.
can't be improved on, and those the attempts to improve it probably ruin it.
Yeah.
And language, not in the abstract, language enacted as speech, and as speech in actual dialogue with a
Yeah.
horizon of truth, like we're doing right now.
Yeah. No, that was really good, because it's like you can't improve language, or that's there's so many factors involved. And then the next question is, what new toy do you suggest? And then let me put in reference to what you just said. Could you improve language by going to a foreign country and not know the language, and you take your cell phone and they say something, and then you look at your cell phone and it translates it? That's almost improving language, right? I mean,
I hate the idea. I hate the idea
I
because
hate the
I'm a
idea.
translator. I'm a polyglot, and I feel embarrassed when I go to a country that I don't know the language. But on the other hand, it's kind of refreshing. It's kind of refreshing. It's like being a flaneur. Well, at least when it's in a European country, I can sort of guess what it might be.
Right.
It's great to not know that there is language, there is meaning, but you don't know what it is, and it's not a complete mystery. It's mostly a mystery,
Yeah.
but it's that mixture of knowing and not knowing that I think is very enlightening about the nature of language and the nature of consciousness. So it's Nietzsche said, it's much more fun to know a language half good than to be fluent. When you are still
Oh, that's good.
when you're looking for word, and you're still playing with the language is a toy. Then you try things, and you make mistakes, and which can be creative, and you learn from them. For the brief period that I wrote poetry, I guess around my 20s, I often would go uh, not to English or French, the language that I was fluent in, but to German.
Oh,
there,
I
there, I
see.
could be truly creative with the language. I think I was approaching a level of serious poetry. As I was when I know the ins and outs. I'm not sure I'm as creative.
Yeah. Beautiful. I really communicate a lot. Thank you, Christian, because McLuhan has that great line: a half a truth is still a lot of a truth.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what you explained to me with that Nietzsche quote, is exactly what Finnegan's Wake is. That
yeah,
Finneganese uses 65 languages in one book. So
yeah,
you're always dabbling half and half, and you can't translate it into another language, but you can try, you know.
yeah,
So that was really good. And you answered the toy question there, because you basically said the tool you suggest is language, and the toy you suggest, because my next question is what is the new toy you suggest? So language, that's good. What do you
yeah.
worry about? What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Uh, the decay of language.
A lot of guys are, well, you're not quite our age, but I'm 10 years older. A lot of guys go that, if I, how many times I got to get up and pee. So that's like the decay of your body.
I'm getting there. This is between you
Yeah,
and you and I and everyone. I'm getting there.
yeah.
Maybe my priorities will change within a few years. Yeah.
No, I think the decay of life. So here is McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. And
Mhm.
by artists, I mean poets, translators, filmmakers, artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might be able to learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Uh, well, yeah, it would demand an uncomfortable twist in consciousness, that realize that we are language, that it's not just verbal in what we consciously formulate, that we are also being spoken by language, and we don't control the ins and out, and lots of it is is acted from outside us. And these are uncomfortable places to go. We'd rather take our subjectivity at face value and its objective expressions, and leave it at that.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
I suppose they do, but I might be hard pressed to define it for them.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Uh, I'm afraid of rote ideas and of dumb ideas, and
That is good. See,
so that takes care of the old and the new.
yeah. That's good. Well, the next question is, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Well, there will, of course, there are early memories, but I mean, by definition, the early one I can get will be the earliest that I can get. I can't remember what there is before.
Right, right, right. But just to mention one that comes to mind.
Somehow I have a vivid flash of being bathed in a kind of plastic, almost a bucket in a cabin, in a forest somewhere, and somehow the floor covering, the kind of sickly 40s turquoise pattern, somehow stuck in my mind, and brings back
Yeah,
like Bruce Madeleine, some sort of the whole scene. So
yeah.
yeah.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
uh well, certainly a blessing, I would. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want to forget anything. No.
yeah,
Well, of course, part of memory is forgetting, but I don't want to forget that either.
yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Role models. Oh, I don't
And you can erase the word role model. Someone who had an impact on you within your immediate family and outside your immediate family. Just briefly, what was that impact?
well, there was this uncle who had a library, that was a big thing, and he had science fiction novels and time life books about all kinds of topics. That's the basis of my culture, and hand me downs of Belgian comics. That's how I learned about Europe and all kinds of interesting places. That's so the basis of my culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's something. But I mean, it's just the objects. It's not anyone in particular. As for actual role models out there, um, uh, well, there would be Bernard Charbonneau, I suppose, that one that I personally knew.
Okay,
Who's
let's do Christian, let's do Charbonneau. Just briefly, what's the main thing you got from him?
uh, you mean as a role model or generally?
General
Just
impact.
ruthless authenticity, ruthless authenticity,
Yeah,
and yeah,
that's really good.
yeah.
Ruthless authenticity. That's really good. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Uh, there is me a particular non-religion, which is the former or post-Catholicism of 1960s, 70s Quebec. It was there's just like I guess the the common religion of Quebec for quite a few generations has been to ignore religion. It's kind of a post-Catholic thing. It's unitary and it's a mass social consensus, but about not caring about religion. It's a very
I
curious
got
thing.
you. Yeah,
In France, it takes a kind of militant form of really being very aggressive and negating about. Here, it's just, it's the indifference. It's really the Nietzschean death of God.
yeah. Do you pray?
Yes. Well, I'm actually a Christian, by the way. But a very, very specific kind. I'm an Orthodox Christian, which is a really kind of out there. Because when I did become a Christian under the impact of a certain aesthetic experience, largely, I sort of looked around myself and well, in history, what was a credible form of Christianity that I could sort of try to see my intuitions of it, and that was, of course, well, not of course, but I mean, it takes took some digging at the time. It was the original form, which was Orthodox Christianity, the first millennium Christianity, that I could take seriously, and it's sort of connected with even sort of advanced postmodern philosophical concerns. The questioning of the metaphysics of presence. That was all there from the beginning. It was, so okay, so the fact that Western Christianity at one point, when it became such and different from Eastern Christianity, sort of went on a tangent that led to technological society. That was an intellectual epiphany, also not just a spiritual one, but the two were connected. It's a kind of degraded or a deviant form of Christianity that we take to be Christianity in the West that has led the uh, world civilization, well, which it created in the first place, to the edge of collapse. Certain misapprehensions of a spiritual and theological nature have led us there, and I think that to take a non-Western understanding of Christianity, I think is the perfect critical uh, post or standing point to understand what has happened to us. Yeah.
Yeah,
For the McLuhan, it was domestic Christianity. I go a few centuries before, like patristic Christianity from until the late first millennium. That's my
very
lodestar.
good. If God does exist, what do you want God to say to you after you die?
uh, 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 well, never mind. Get in anyway.
Never mind, get in anyway. That's good. Do very good. Do evil people exist, or does the evil use people as a vehicle?
Well, uh, I guess once evil uses them as a vehicle, they become, in a sense, evil. But and yet, that's not the that's not what they are in essence, and that may not be the end of the story either. So I guess more the second half of the statement, you know.
Okay, that's good because the follow-up question goes into it. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? First, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, it depends about what you mean by what he means by acknowledge. It can't hurt to realize that someone is in the posture of your enemy. But you also have to. I guess that's where he's right. I mean that if you position them as essentially your enemy, and don't see beyond that, that you feed that kind of relationship, and you create your enemy, in a sense. So,
So, how do you generally advise someone to deal with an enemy? Just in general, what would you say?
oh, uh, well, my impulse would be to treat them as kind of mishap of life, like a disease, and don't take it personally. Yeah,
That is good. American Zen is really cool. It says,
yeah,
don't believe anything, um, keep an open mind, and take nothing personal. It's like that is a hard to take nothing personal is a high aspiration.
yeah.
Okay, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years, years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Uh, Well, I would answer with the famous McLuhan quip, which can be used in so many ways. We don't know who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't a fish. You need to be a kind of a fish out of water, looking at the bowl as a bowl, to realize what fish do and what they are. And that's what we do with when
Yeah.
we have any kind of fictional distance with things. We need that kind of distance, to understand or even feel. If we're stuck, if we're just living our lives completely involved in them, in a sense, we're not fully appreciating it. It's to realize the contingency of it can bring an element of appreciation and even wonder to even the most banal or even tragic
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah. So you do a lot. I love your main thing is you're a translator, you're a film critic, and you're an art historian. I mean, let's say those are sort of 3-year things. I mean, if you're at a cocktail party and someone just says, Christian, what do you do? What do you say in like one word? Do you say professor or what do you say?
Oh no, people call me professor spontaneously, and I have to correct that. No, no, I haven't never had any even so much as a job interview for any kind.
Okay.
Uh, Even in academia. So I am a doctor. I do have a PhD, but that's never been any good to me professionally. But I do
Right.
consider myself. I do introduce myself as a historian, a cultural historian. That is my
Historian. Okay.
calling, even though I never had a job in that area. So I do it
Right,
as an
right. No,
independent
that's
scholar.
That's good,
And
historian. So
my translation stuff finances that. That's
yeah,
so it doesn't
yeah,
come first; it comes last.
right,
And I try to make it converge with my scholarly interests. To more and more to try to translate, say, Bernard Charbonneau from French to
yeah,
English. So I don't feel like I have to sell myself to something that I don't want to do the things that I would like to that I want to do in my spare time. I don't function like that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go jump right into this then. A screenwriting teacher told me great art, great film, great book is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. So let's put this in two contexts. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're being a translator historian and when you were writing poetry? So let's just put it to. So poetry, what role does intention play? And when you're a translator historian, what role does intention play?
Well, I don't do a lot of poetry these days. I do some when I'm really prodded. I have a friend who runs a kind of a poetry blog in Paris, and sometimes she gathers as a challenge for the followers. She puts on a painting by her mother, and then we're supposed to sort of translate it into poetry.
Yeah,
When I'm pushed into a corner like that, and I even give myself the extra challenge of putting it in a haiku, so that I don't go all over the place. I have just so many syllables, and I have to cram all kinds of things. But it's more of an intellectual game. I don't consider myself terribly creative
right.
in an artistic sense, but I do. I think my creativity is the part. What you left out of the equation in your immediate question is it comes in as an art critic.
Art
uh,
critic.
I
Okay,
can get into someone else's creative process and make it clear, even clearer to them than it was, before they read my explanation. I do have artists who really like the way I talk about their work, because it's a kind of secondary creativity I found things in their work that they weren't even clearly aware that they were there, but they ring true to them.
you're
So
the co-creator. That's like McLuhan, the user is the content. Or what I say is when the artist makes their art, it's no longer theirs. It's the
yeah,
users. They can do
yeah.
anything. So that's the perfect follow-up is Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your reader when you're writing art criticism or writing film criticism?
Not enough, and my editors keep reminding me, cut those sentences, untangle the syntax, it all makes perfect sense to me, and I don't see any reason to put an end to a sentence that can go on growing secondary and tertiary clauses, forever, like you can do in German.
But
I write that
Christian,
in French, and which is
yeah,
and of course in English it's even less acceptable. But yeah, that's my kind of
but
rhizomatic creativity there.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I'm the same way. But I want to ask you because I just came up with this new question because um, this jazz guitarist was talking about it is does the artist, do you as the writer, the art critic, have an obligation to be accessible? You know, I mean, I know that people say, make it sound more simple and make it accessible to your reader. And I'm like, why? So the question is, like your editors are telling you, make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Do you have an obligation to be accessible? Do you meaning does the writer, the art critic have an obligation? Not you specifically. Should the art critic have an obligation to make their writing accessible?
uh, well, I don't feel that from spontaneously, but then of course, if I put myself in someone else's shoe, yes, I would like an art critic that I read to be more accessible. Yeah, but that's a different hat.
Yeah,
So I lack the empathy of putting myself in the reader's place, and so yeah,
good.
maybe I lack an organ that way of the writing is a two-way process. I just want to perfect. Basically, it's related to the way that. I know what I think when I'm forced to say it. So I don't
Yeah,
know what I mean in advance of writing it. So I discover
yeah,
it it's an experimental process of to discovering what I actually think. That's my priority. That's what happens in when I build my sentences. I want to discover what I'm thinking, and then I'm not trying to communicate something that I know beforehand. I don't know beforehand.
yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's really one of the great experimental filmmakers, Bruce Connors, says, "I made films that no one else was making that I wanted to see made." So,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I'm discovering as I go along, or, you know, um, as McLuhan and Warhol both said, art is anything you can get away with.
Yeah.
So, the whole extension thing. Knife and fork extends our teeth. The
Mm.
shutter in a camera is extension of our eyelid. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a keyboard or a pen, what humanness? McLuhan called it human sensorium. I call it humanness. What humanness is extended for you with the writing utensil?
Well, I just explained to you that my thinking happens through writing. When I'm forced
Right.
to write, my thinking takes shape. So it's a direct extensions of I guess the logical or metaphorical structures of my thinking, and therefore of my feeling, or more in the sense of my sense, my sense of self in connection to some sort of object of thought. So the
It's
writing is
good.
an extension of that.
Yeah. That was good. I talked to Michael Apted, the movie director, 40 years ago, and I said, "Why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast?" This is right when MTV B-52s were rocking the house with their MTV videos. Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese said, "I cut my films faster because of MTV." So Michael Apted answered the question saying, "We've learned to take in information faster." And I asked this question with a bias: can humans literally take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Uh, I, I, I lost some of the sound in your last statement. Are we what to take to for information
Are
faster?
we Can humans literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Well, it's true, but probably it's the I think it's true, but probably information changes in nature qualitatively in the process. It becomes, as McLuhan pointed out, it becomes pattern recognition. So it's not the same information that if we process it in a linear fashion, and that can lead to kind of almost painful, cognitive dissonance for people who are sort of literate or literary minded when they plunge into multimedia overload of certain contemporary displays. Actually, I sent you a paper where I took that issue. That's in the Elul conference that I helped organize this summer. I was My own contribution was to answer uh, an Elulian thinker who was criticizing, these newfangled multimedia displays that present the works of a certain classic painter,
Yeah,
Van Gogh, Monet,
right.
whatever. So,
Yeah.
to him, that this experience was very traumatic. He came out of that almost not noxious and it was a kind of a physical trauma of not being able to process things one after the other in a kind of focused way, And I was sort of, my answer to that is that you don't have to take it in that way. You can just let go and let it wash over you, and yet still recognize and appreciate the patterns that emerge that have a kind of even fleetingly, they have a quality of epiphany that you might not have, in a in front of an artificial window in a white cube.
Yeah.
Often modern painting is actually is trying to get you there to a kind of all over experience of a wide open environment that actually the electric media have made us more receptive for. So there's yeah. So
No, that was good,
layers
Christian.
layers to that answer. It's different
Yeah,
kinds
there
of knowing.
it reminded me of either Damien Hirst or Banksy said, "What's your favorite art?" He says, "The postcard in the gift shop." I don't need to see the Van Gogh. It happened to me with Francis Bacon.
Yeah.
I saw his art and loved it. I had it little posters in my room all the time, clippings. And then I saw a painting of his at the Tate, and it was so big, I ran out of the museum. It was too overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, so that was amazing what you said. But the hidden question in my question was, can humans literally multitask?
Uh, yeah, I don't see why not. To a
Okay.
degree, Yeah, yeah.
What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch.
Hmm. Now, they were communicating with what they depicted. Now, to what purpose? Uh, uh, of course, there was a practical purpose, but it was a spiritual communion with what happened to be the basis of their livelihood. To have this ongoing dialogue with animal spirits. That's what ensured that they would keep coming.
Yeah.
So it's both very practical, but the means are very spiritual. It's there's no real distinction at that level. So it's it's in a sense it's very utilitarian in the sense of practical, but it's there's nothing prosaic about it. It's through visual and audiovisual poetry that you actually communicate with those spirits that are vital to your existence. So there's no dichotomy there between the useful and the gratuitously artistic. It's prior to that distinction.
Is it much different for artists and filmmakers now? What you just described, same thing or way different?
Uh, well, I don't think filmmakers or artists depend for their very physical existence on communicating it with what they invoke through their art. It's not that direct at all.
Yeah.
It may be indirect in that the best of them may be trying to connect with some sort of ground of truth, that will nourish them, but it's
Yeah.
so it's become in a sense little more, less immediately practical, but that may be vital. That's why we take them so seriously, because they do the best ones do address our deepest need,
Yeah.
which our whole practical life pulls us in a completely different direction. It's like we have to completely alienate our true being to keep it alive. Whereas you have to go in a different direction than spirit, and an opposite direction to spirit to maintain your body alive. But that was not the case originally.
Yeah.
It was spiritual focus was vital to bodily survival. There wasn't a
Yeah.
distinction.
That's
And maybe
what
what you're
Billy.
pointing to, the best artist, is to restore that original connection.
Yeah. Billy Wilder says, I just hope they like my movie as much as they like the popcorn. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
That's too general. It really depends on the context and what is at stake.
That's fine.
Sometimes it's important to remain alive, and therefore to compromise for that, so that you can act at some level or at some other context according to your conviction. It's really it doesn't have to be all at once all the time.
Yeah, my favorite answer in the first 25, I've been asking that question for over 30 years. It was like my first question, and I got it from Christine McKenna, a writer. And it took 25 years before someone went, depends on what you mean by important. Because they took it, people accent conviction or compromise, but there's one other really good word there, important.
Exactly.
So T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Well, linguistically, it would be more French and English, but maybe you're looking for a more creative answer. Is it in images? Is it in words? Is it in sounds? It's usually words.
Yeah. See, Christian, you really got it, because this series is about inventing new questions. So you didn't go, it's in words, images, and sounds. You says, is it in words, images, and sound? So that was you answered a question with a question. You win. That's what this series is all about. So two of my film heroes, George Manupelli, he says, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says, there is no self-expression. And the jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So again, it's a stupid question. I know it's both and it depends, but is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, cultures, and environments are dominant?
Well, unless these outer impulses are translated by a semi-coherent self, it's not going to be very creative or very, very compelling. So it's a co-creation, I suppose, of the self and the environment. We don't know where one ends, the other begins, and what they're up to. Who is acted, who or what is acted by who or what. It just happens.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
Probably. I'm thinking of certain forms of Asian calligraphy, that sort of thing, which are often spiritual practices of their own. So yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
But usually it's not. That usually there has to be some. That usually there will be some sort of investment of self, but that somehow transcends itself by identifying with a certain motion or pattern, etc., beyond itself, and identifying with that, and being remade by that for a while at least. So again, it's blurring that distinction. So, but there has to be some sort of subject that initiates or lends himself to that practice. So it doesn't just happen on its own. There has to be intentionality and attention.
It's interesting because 90% of people answered it. No, it can't be egoless. And then someone eventually said, good art is egoless. And I went, wow. And then a couple of weeks ago, someone said, it has to be egoless. So, it is the full range, what you
Yeah.
said. And so Lewis
Well,
Carroll said,
egoless is not necessarily the same as selfless.
yeah, that's right.
Ego has to get out of the way
Yeah.
normally, or be used in a creative way that's not ego-centered. Something else
Well,
has to take over.
it's also my follow-up question to be smartassy. Sometimes I go, was Freud right?
About what?
That's what people usually say. Yeah. No, this big famous Hollywood director said in front of a bunch of film students, he goes, that's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah. Well,
About what?
yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
By default, my instinct there is to say, no, probably not. But let's look at the details. But my instinct is, if it looks obvious to
That's
Freud, it's probably wrong. But let's test it.
exactly. It's Woody Allen making Marshall change his question into a statement in Annie Hall.
Yeah.
It is a question Marshall would say. Do you mean my whole fallacy is wrong? And Woody made him say it backwards as a statement.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you mean my whole fallacy is wrong? So Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Well, uh, to believe is to entertain a certain level of possibility. If you believe something to be impossible, you don't actually believe it. You entertain its possibility, and therefore you cannot deny it radically.
Yeah.
There are things one can think that can stretch the realm of possibility of the possibility, and you can go to the limit of that. That becomes an interesting paradox, and that's very stimulating. And there's usually some kind of truth in holding the paradox of holding together to mutually contradictory things at once. Is probably the most creative intellectual posture to do that.
That's it. That's what I learned from Frank Zappa, is to embrace contradiction.
Yeah,
He said, nothing is what I want.
yeah.
Here we go. This is McLuhan. You touched on this in 57. It's misleading to suppose there's any difference between occasions. However, it's always been true, whatever pleases teaches more effectively. Any comments on those key words? Pleasing teaches more effectively. Because you've learned from being a film critic and an art critic, and then you're partly an educate, and it's education. You're teaching people about this artist's work or this filmmaker's work. But most people would say film is entertainment, or going to see Van Gogh's light show is entertainment.
Well, good for them, but I don't see it that way at all. But I'm not scandalized by that the people wandering in those multimedia displays of Van Gogh, like they're in a fairground, and all that's missing is the
Yeah.
popcorn, whatever. Good for them. I just
Yeah.
it's a chaos like life, and you can take it at different levels. But I I think the general atmosphere should be pleasant rather than having to hold your head in your hands about the music, or just to fixate on an artificial window on the wall, and going to art trances over that. No, it's uh,
Well, it's good. You know, Jimmy.
Yeah, it can please a crowd and yet be able. We
Yeah,
can also read it at a different level.
yeah. I just got a great new one from Harvey, the movie with Jimmy Stewart from the
Uh-huh.
50s. He says, "Well, they're smart and pleasant. I tried smart, but now I think being pleasant is more important than being smart."
Uh-huh. Socially, probably, yeah.
Yeah, tell me, in your pursuit of learning and creating, the years you've been doing it, tell me one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Well, probably what's changed is the place of self, which probably came first or initially in pretty much everything that I did. So we've explored that before. What has not changed? Well, probably the focus on truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I guess the focus on truth has led me to a place a little freer of self. Let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That was
so
good. And you started with truth. I love this. We went into the truth words, the Bunwell quote on truth. The word true, believe, has the word lie in the middle of it. On what occasion do you lie?
oh yeah. Yeah, when I tell my folks about what I'm doing, so I try to keep it intelligible and not too offensive for them. I leave anything important out. I keep it to finance and technical matters. Things I can handle. Anything of real importance to me, I leave out, and sometimes I will. I mean, it can be really major things, and of which they
Yeah.
have no clue because I know they can't handle it. We neither of us needs the trouble.
Yeah.
I bracket the truth as no place in my family relations.
Yeah.
So when I say truth, it's not like I'm the kind of honest Abe. No,
Yeah.
I know when to lie, and I know when to pursue truth.
Yeah.
That's it. So
That's good.
so yeah.
Yeah, it's a Marcel Proust question, and two of my favorite answers, as Tom Waits said, "On what occasion do you lie?" He says, "I didn't know you needed an occasion." But this one woman who dresses the stars, she goes, "That's called manners."
Yeah.
So
I know,
it
and
is very interesting.
I like to say people that hypocrisy is the basis of civilization.
Yeah,
I don't want to know what most people actually feel, especially about me. No, uh, please let's pretend that we have a kind of distance, amicability to each other. Please. I don't care how you really feel, or
yeah.
maybe that will come out in a different context, sure. But let's keep a facade of superficial amicability. That's the very core of civilization.
How that's so appropriate. Warhol said, "It's not who you are, it's who you think you are." Well, anyways, I like what you said, and it reminded me of it, striving towards being civil. Well, it's another great line is George Carlin. How could we ever have a civil war? Okay, Christian, it's really fun. I appreciate your time. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Hmm. Well, I suppose a basic inability to handle physical embodiment and presence led me to explore and possibly overdeveloped an intellectual life as as a default way of handling existence, true. So,
Yeah.
but that's also a big problem that I spend the rest of my life trying to also overcome, to come back to that original scene of just being present physically to a situation. So it's a
Yeah.
paradox, so I'm trying to walk back, through intellect, my escape from the constraints of the body,
Yeah,
because
that's
that's where I moved, long ago. So that's who I am now, and yet it's not enough. I know intellectually it's not enough, so I have to convince the rest of me to follow where my intellect is telling me. There was more to it than that, and that's what you left behind long ago. So find some way to rediscover it, or to discover it properly. I
yeah,
missed my
that's
entrance in life. So I just went into into a kind of disassociated state, in a sense, and I'm trying to, within the term of that mental dissociation, to find to recover a lost kind of maybe mythical unity. Yeah.
well, that's there's some philosopher said we live life walking forwards, but in order to understand it, you got to walk backwards.
Yeah.
So that backward step was good that you said. Word. So anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
Uh, when it doesn't fully consume you, and it's not all about you personally.
Yeah.
There's something bigger involved, and that is not exhausted in the anger. It's anger when there's something bigger at stake.
I asked my friend, can satire be destructive? He wrote comedy with Robin Williams. He said that's the job of satire. But we know if you do a certain cartoon in a certain country and they kill you, most people think dying is destructive. So Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
Um, uh, to create critical distance, but it's not all, at the same time. There has to be a level of sympathy, even. uh, uh, it can't. Yeah.
Well, you anticipated the next question, and that word that was perfect. There's a line that goes like this, Christian. You create what you resist. And I'm not saying you, Christian, I'm saying one creates what one resists. The comedian Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. James
Uh-huh.
Joyce said, it's a curious thing that your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve.
Yeah.
And Louis Buñuel said, thank God I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
So, is any thoughts on this idea? You create what you resist.
Well, yes, it's a co-creation. You have to entertain what you resist, in order to keep resisting it. So you give it power, by resisting it, and you define what that self opposition, in the name of which you resist it, by resisting. It's really a two-way positing of a certain conundrum, or opposition, that can it's a trap to let it define you. To be defined by what you're against too much. Because I often think, of course, of Shakespeare's line. He protests too much. When you
Yeah.
protest too much about something, it's probably that you are more involved in that what you denounce than you care to admit.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
Uh, uh, I would say agon might be more defining of masculinity, whereas uh, sympathy or empathy when might be more significant of female existence.
What caused matriarchy?
You uh, you're you're assuming that you're suggesting that there was matriarchy in the past, or that it had just, or what, or that is just a reason. Or I don't. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's very good because Eric McLuhan said men.
Ah,
And basically I think the answer is biology caused matriarchy because there was cultures that historians say were more women ruling. And then the funny sort of push it to the present or recent present is the word mafia begins with the letters ma, ma,
yeah,
because women run the world, but they let men think they run the world. Now, I'm not
yeah.
saying I agree with that or not, but it's an idea to think about, you know.
Well, it's been said, that men's societies, in the sense, in an anthropological sense, like uh, 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 for instance, in tribes that have the men-only societies, or in more modern regimes, I
Yeah,
don't know, militaristic leagues, whatever. They have they have a maternal quality. It's like men find in male bonding a kind of substitute
yeah,
for female motherhood. It is kind of an all male collective motherhood that they can identify with, and that to which they develop attitudes that are related to that of an infant to the mother.
yeah,
That a lot of outwardly macho ideologies or postures can be uh, somewhat illuminated that way. Yeah, as kind of
yeah,
substitute all male mother structures.
yeah. That's Oscar Wilde said, women fret becoming their mothers. Men don't, and that's their problem.
Yeah.
So, Christian, can you forget to die? Oh, did it? Wait, did I already ask you that? If I did, excuse me.
No.
Okay. Can you forget to die?
Well, this suggests that dying is an act.
Yeah,
Whereas it just happens to you, but you can. Yeah, it's essentially passive. But even if you kill yourself, it's still something that happens to you. You don't just
yeah,
die. uh, uh, but there's another level at which, I mean, uh, there's some sort of sense in which, if you could forget that you live in time, and in that state of mind, you could forget to. I mean, theoretically, from within that state of mind, you could forget to die. That you're in an
Yeah,
eternal presence, and you'll never be aware that you ever leave it. It's
yeah. Well, it's like Harold Bloom. They asked him, "Do you believe in God?" And he says, "I don't like him and I don't trust him and I wish he'd go away, but I know he won't because he's built into the language." As Nietzsche said,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
part of the way we think. So
yeah.
we don't know anything, but people are like, death and taxes and blah blah blah. So we got about 15 more minutes. Can you go a little over or you got to go in 15?
No, no, no. I've no problem.
Okay. Thank you. These are 5 Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in a few words. 1, who started it all?
Um, well, does it have to start? I mean,
Very
it happened
good.
that way. It just happened
That's
that way.
good. That's a good answer. I've never had that question asked to that question. Very good. Are we going to make it?
Well, of course, Jim Morrison's answer. No one is going to makes it out of here alive, or you gets out of here alive. So, but I mean, what? Uh, no, no. What on second thought and even on first thought, no, we're doomed at every level, individually, collectively, and by the nature of things. No, we do not make it.
Third, where do we put it?
uh, Out of mind.
Very good. Who's cleaning it up?
Well, it's also self cleaning.
Oh, nice. That's my invention. I thought if someone could invent a self-cleaning kitchen, it's a no-brainer. Okay, the fifth Watts question is it serious?
There's a wonderful joke that I often remember that was told to me by one of my thesis subjects. So someone who had lived through the Russian Revolution, etc. It was about the First World War, and of course when the Central Powers won the edge of defeat in 1918, and then there was a communique from the German High Command, let's say in fall 1918. The situation is serious, but not desperate. That was Berlin. At the same time, in Vienna, there was a communique. The situation is desperate, but not serious.
The exact opposite. That's good.
But the two ways of approaching the exact same situation. So
Yep.
the situation is serious. No, the situation is desperate, but not serious. Whereas
No.
the supposedly professional people will say the situation is serious but not desperate.
Yeah.
You can turn that around and say, well, it's desperate but it's not serious. That's the Viennese spirit. You can sort of waltz around, then whatever. It's the end of the world. Well, okay, it's no reason not to enjoy wine, woman, and song. Because the Prussian sees, okay, it's almost desperate, but by sheer force of will and technical deployment, we can overturn the situation in our advantage. But I prefer the Viennese attitude. We
That's
can still
Frank's
be cheerful about it. That's
yeah.
what I'm getting at. That's what my
Yeah.
attitude to life.
Yeah, that's good. Um Frank Zappa says, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Yeah, yeah.
So which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over or under?
Over,
Why?
over.
Why?
Well, well, that's a good question, but you don't want to fumble for it, and I don't know. It's you don't want to reach. I don't know. I'm sure there are good reasons. I have to reverse engineer my answer. When I have a moment, I'm not sure I want to do it now, but
But
instinctively, it seems so obvious, and I'm shocked whenever I face the opposite situation.
well, that's funny because 95% people say over. That's how the patent is, a
Yeah,
100-year-old patent. But the 5% who say under, they have their reasons. That's the
yeah,
funny thing.
yeah.
How do you find peace of mind?
Uh, um, by sensing the big picture where everything sort of dwindles to near insignificance, but or to a kind of a kind of aesthetic distance, let's say.
Well, that's, you know, McLuhan called it suspended judgment, and he said understanding is not having a point of view.
Hmm.
Is that what you're talking about? Somewhat similar to that?
Uh, yeah, yeah. It's allow oneself to be seen by the situation rather than by that trying to grasp it. To
Yeah.
to 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 be a kind of somehow an open shutter of awareness in the broader situation.
Yeah.
To shift to that, to let the space feel through your particular consciousness rather than having trying to grasp the space through your viewpoint.
Very good. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
uh, um, Pass. I'd have to think about it.
That's all right. Pass is actually a good title. They Christian, they wanna scent the glue in the binding of your autobiography. What smell?
The smell of the binding. Huh.
Yeah, the smell of the glue binding, yeah.
What smell? Wow. Well, it's funny. The old books like that often have a smell. I hadn't connected it specifically to, and I hadn't realized one could determine a scent that one could put in it. So, well, let's see. Is there a scent that I would like to? I don't know.
Well, that's
So
what I like.
I know. One of my favorite scents is cinnamon pop tart.
Nice. Well, that smell you brought up though is old bookstore smell is one of my favorite smells. When you go into a bookstore and you
Yeah,
can smell the old books. So
yeah.
if there was a statue built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Hmm. Uh, well, it might be around here in my neighborhood, the old port of Montreal, this kind of post-industrial space. Well, maybe out of rusty metal. See.
I like that. Okay, so let's return to the top of this interview for a few minutes before we close out. Because you said the best thing for a human being was to seek truth. And I've collected truth quotes for quite a while because it's something I pursue as well. It's like, how do we define truth? How do we know we found it? How do we know that everything is fluid and in flux? So the first one I'd love you to react to is Shelby Foote. He said, a fact is not a truth until you love it. Any comments on that?
Well, then it's fun because it's true at the different levels. You know, the kind of vulgar level where well, you have the level of Trump's Truth Social. You know that truth is actually Trump's ideal somehow. You know, because it's whatever
Yeah.
they make up or whatever they like is that the truth. So, but at another level, uh, uh, I I guess by uh, uh, experiencing with pleasure the revelation of a certain fact, that pleasure is itself an experience of truth. It can be, you're connecting with the real through that fact, and therefore it becomes truthful for you. Now there probably a bigger context for that to hold true in other contexts, but yeah, I think pleasure is some kind of indicator of truth, and
Because
that by the way it would sum up the work of Marcel Proust. It's
Marcel Proust. No.
yeah, the word pleasure comes up hundreds of times. There's these little epiphanies of contact with the real, which have a truth value. You know,
Yeah.
and
Be-
it's when that pleasure of bumping against something, against the fact. A kink. Uh, uh, a kink on the ground that reminds you of another kink in Venice, and those are true facts, and somehow the fact of connecting them as facts is intensely pleasurable because it's contact with the real. It's independent of you and yet connected with you, and that's truth. What more do you want? Yeah, it's everything comes together in such experiences of true pleasure and pleasing truth.
yeah. It also reminded me of this line that goes something like, science discovers fact that can be interpreted many different ways.
I missed something between fact and many different ways.
Yeah. Science can discover true facts that can be interpreted many different ways.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the second true one is Bob Evans, a movie producer.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says there's three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth, and no one is lying.
Well, yeah. Except the truth is sort of hanging in midair. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Whose truth? Yeah.
Whose
Well.
truth? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I.F. Stone, the great political writer in America. He said, the truth as I see it. One more.
What
Yeah.
other way is there? What are they?
Yeah.
How else are you going to recognize truth by seeing it and being yourself seeing it? It's yeah. Yeah.
Is perception reality?
Uh, well, it's reality as perception. The perception is real enough, but
Yeah,
doesn't mean the content of the perception is real. But the perception is real.
very good. Yeah. So here's Schopenhauer. All truth passes through three stages. One, it's ridiculed. Two, it's violently opposed. And three, it's accepted as being self evident. Like, I knew it all along. I really like that one, but it is funny how it's first ridiculed, then it's opposed, and
Yeah,
then I knew it all along.
yeah. It goes without saying.
It
Everybody
goes
knows
without
that. We've
saying.
always known that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got a few more. This has really been fun. I wanted to ask you about film because I'm always intrigued by an art form that is, like you said, what's your favorite form of information? You said film. And it is something that humans have really gravitated towards as a commonality. You sit and you talk about films with other people or TV shows, any moving image art.
Mhm.
Whereas, people don't generally talk about books, you know. And so Tarkovsky told no, Stan Brakhage, who's, you know, pals with your guy Elder, Bruce Elder. Stan loved Bruce's films.
Yeah.
He was introducing Tarkovsky in '83 at Telluride Film Festival. And he said, back to this motif, I think the three greatest tasks for film in the 20th century are: one, to make the epic, that is, to tell the tale of the tribes of the world. Two, to keep it personal, because only in the eccentricities of our personal lives do we have any chance at the truth. And three, to do the dream work that is to illuminate the borders of the unconscious. So you got to admit, Stan Brakhage, who was a big influence by Pound and Gertrude Stein, was being very articulate with these three, you know, task of film in the 20th century.
Mhm.
Any comment on the three, and what are your 21st century updates? Being a film critic, can you see the art form doing more or having more tasks, pursuing more, or is it just regurgitating those three tasks?
Uh, the art is to connect them and to maybe make sensitive the connective tissue between these three strands.
Yeah,
That maybe the three are just really one, and in what way, to make that palpable somehow.
yeah. Because maybe D.W. Griffith did it. 100 years ago, he invented basically the feature film. And he said in 2024, which is in 2 years, cinema will end warfare. It's like, that's a high aspiration. can can cinema do anything? And Sidney Lumet, who was a socially conscious filmmaker, said films can't do anything, but it won't keep me from trying.
Uh-huh. Wow. I agree. There's this the classic sort of adage or quote by William the Silent. It's not necessary to hope to endeavor, and it's not necessary to succeed, to persevere. You know, you just do what you have to do. It doesn't have to lead
And
anywhere. You know.
you mean he's saying the only thing is to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you don't need to have a real hope of succeeding at anything. You just have
yeah.
this drive to launch an attempt of some kind, and that's enough.
That's Frank Zappa said, "Don't stop and keep going." But Godard, who just passed away, a brilliant speaker and thinker, he um he told Michael Moore at the Cannes Film Festival when Fahrenheit 9/11 came out, or whatever it is, 4/11, 9/11. He
Yeah,
said, "Your film is going to help Bush get elected." Now, it didn't help Bush get elected per se, but it galvanized pro-Bushers.
yeah.
So, we've had a slew of political documentaries, from the greatest being, I think, Battle of Algiers. But I mean, with Michael Moore and up to today, there's amazing amount of political documentaries, agenda-ridden activists. These political documentaries, do they more activate people or more pacify people?
I think they agitate people, but in a bad way. They have they feel good about the whatever right opinions and feelings they feel they have, but I don't think it goes much beyond that. It helps.
Yeah.
They're already convinced to feel good about themselves. It's preaching to the choir, and I don't think it changes the game in a broader sense.
Yeah, the activist she said, "We're just singing to the choir, and there ain't even a choir."
Yeah.
Utah Phillips said that anarchy is making rules for other people and not yourself. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Uh, Authentic community, wherever and however it arises. It may be, may well be on a one-on-one basis of dialogue. That's a society that creates its own rules as it goes along, and that is pleasantly policed by them.
Yeah. Look, I've got a few more, and I want to really thank you, Christian, especially for going over, because we can get a little deeper here. McLuhan asked a question. He didn't make this as a statement. It was a percept, it was a probe, not a
Mhm,
concept.
mhm.
He said, "How about technologies as the collective unconscious and art as the collective unconsciousness?" So he's basically saying art and technology, conscious and consciousness. So, how do you distinguish between art and technology and conscious and consciousness?
Uh, well, the conscious suggests particular content, whereas consciousness is the state or the medium of awareness. So art points to that rather than to the management of contents, which would be consciousness or unconsciousness, whatever whichever way you want to handle it. So if they both deal with the unconscious, art deals with the state, whereas technology manages the contents.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually this Jumpin' Gene. He's been teaching sociology at Notre Dame for 35 years. 2 days ago, said almost the exact same thing as you. So it really helped me clarify that, because I think McLuhan can be, um, it's hard to get McLuhan, I think. On the surface, people think they get him, but it is. I think it's sort of your goal to Charbonneau, to how do we make him accessible to people, how and not be he's understandable, and here's how he's understandable, you know.
Mm.
So a couple more and we're out of here. Thank you. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Wait, something good that I've never had and I never want. Hmm. Uh, Great wealth.
Yeah. Guess what? The three answers I get the most are money, fame, and heroin.
Well, how does heroin count as good? Maybe,
Well,
maybe
well,
in the moment.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying the people
Yeah,
I
yeah,
ask.
yeah, yeah. I know.
That's funny. I get all kinds of answers, but that was, it's
Yeah.
funny when see what I try to do as a pattern recognizer. I try to study the patterns on how people answer these,
Mhm.
and I'm always for someone to say something that I've never heard. Some, get okay. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Oh. Ah, duck.
Duck.
I prefer
That's
the I prefer the vomit.
duck is well, my favorite answer there was this woman on the Venice boardwalk said, I would take the velocity of the bag of shit and I'd use it to swoop me out of the vat of vomit.
Ah!
And I
Wow.
said, and I said to her, do you know that's Descent into the Maelstrom? The short story McLuhan discusses in his first book on the first page.
Wow.
So it is it's fun. Okay, so
Well, it's a good it's a good analogy for flushing the toilet. Which is what I think is the stage we're at as a civilization and a species. So
yeah,
Maelstrom is has very many levels and
yeah.
flavors.
Well, that's yeah, the maelstrom is that's when they asked McLuhan, are you an optimist or a pessimist? And he says, I'm an apocalypse. We're fucked. Yeah, he didn't say the word fuck, but basically he was saying apocalypse root the etymology of the word is to reveal.
Which
So
is a
he's
good thing for a
which
Christian.
is
The apocalypse is a good thing. So it's
right.
it's yeah,
It's like the Toto in The Wizard of Us. It's pulling back the curtain.
yeah,
That's what that
exactly.
you're revealing, and then you just you know
Yeah.
what's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Ah, yes. The end of the work ethic.
Nice.
That people don't want to will not stand for meaningless work anymore. They don't want to. They will even go without a job rather than returning to them. That's what been a great blessing of that COVID thing, and it's also the logic of automation that it should make human work obsolete, and that should be a good thing. Now now we can begin to set the real tasks that we should have inherited from industrial age is to redistribute not money but time, and that's what people are coming to realize. What they don't want to be on a rat race for money, but they'll do almost anything to have time to live, which is the only place that where life even happens, takes place. So that's one. I'm generally a bleak pessimist, but that's one ray of hope. I'm so glad this is happening, and there's reports about this happen this this plague of dropouts is the greatest news I've heard in many years in my lifetime, perhaps.
Well, who are the one or two cultural critics or authors or filmmakers or public speakers who have talked about this and inspired you to, understand it? Is there anybody?
Yes, actually, it's another even more unknown genius on my plate called Arnaud Dandieu, who was a sort of a slightly older generation than Ellul and Charbonneau, and who inspired them both precisely on those issues. Uh, by seeing the logic of automation as obsolescing human work, and that should be turned into a good thing by a combination of basic income and civilian service to do whatever uh, uh, work or the labor or drudgery is still left unmade by machines to do it in our place, to distribute that through society, and
What's the spelling on Arnold's last name?
Arnaud and Arnaud, and then family name is Dandieu, Dandieu.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll look into them. So that's funny because displaying dropouts, that's what when people ask me, what do you do? I go, I do nothing effectively.
that's very good.
But it's also, most people, I don't ask it very often, but I do sometimes. Where did you get your work ethic? They 99.9% go, my parents. You
Yeah.
know, that's where they got their work ethic. And I says, have you ever read the Wikipedia entry on work ethic? About the third paragraph down, it says, this may be a scam by consumer capitalism.
Well, it's there's important distinctions to be made here, because I mean, when you give up on you have to break the work ethic to really get into a work that you don't count your effort for. That's where the real work starts, and when you don't have to be paid for it. That's what you
Yeah,
want to do anyway. Labor is different from that. It's what you have to be paid to do, because you wouldn't do that of your own
yeah,
accord. Basically, you rent yourself out as a slave. That's called wage slavery.
yeah,
That's the sort of default position that the work ethic sort of theologically is justified as the ground of our current economy and social arrangements. But that's what needs to be broken. To have a to connect work directly with creativity, and to leave whatever is not creative as something, a kind of unpleasant duty, that can be socialized, like there's a military service. No one wants to go on a battlefield to die, but you'd have to do it for your community. Well, same thing with whatever cannot be automated, that no one wants to do. Mobilize people a couple of years of their life, do that sort of thing, and then you're free to do with your basic income just enough to be alive, and to be free with your time to do creative things, whatever turns you on. Nothing, if you prefer. That's laziness is better than wage slavery.
that's a great statement because that's George Carlin said, uh, um, whatever happened to letting kids stare out the window? Daydreaming. I asked this musician from Belgium a couple weeks ago, and she talked about boredom, and boredom gets a bad rap. And she says, no, it's like daydreaming. It's not like, oh, I've got to go here that this time, I
Yeah,
got to do that. But I've told like art and film students before, I say, get your job and your life as mixed up as possible.
yeah,
But then the cliche is, don't take your job home with you. So it's like, there's a little contradiction there. that you
Yeah.
we've got to navigate. It's basically you don't want to have tension and stress. So, people want to go home and vegetate and watch Netflix or whatever. It's like, I can't,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the movie industry has gotten to. Anytime I go to Netflix and see what they offer, it drives me nuts. I was like, why did I even go here? This is
Yeah.
horrible, you know? And so
Well, we
I
got
know,
to free leisure as well. We got to liberate because even our leisure is mobilized. Like we have to compensate from our
yeah,
labor alienation. We have to over invest in that invention, parallel invention, an alibi of leisure. And boredom should play an important role in that. I mean, we should pull the plug on entertainment and just
yeah,
just stand and stare through the window or out there. That
yeah,
should be enough.
yep. Amazing. Yeah, because the Aborigines in Australia have no word for boredom. So I
Yeah,
always go, do they never get bored? Well, no, they probably get bored, but they just didn't name it.
yeah, but you probably know that quote from John Cage about the Zen master that he had or that he knew of. We said, when you meditate and you get bored, when you do something and you get bored after 2 minutes, do it for 20 minutes. And if you get bored after 20 minutes, well, do it for 20 hours. If you get bored about 20 hours, we'll do it for 20 days. Yeah, these Buddhists have 3 year, 3 months retreats. I guess that's what they do.
Yeah,
Is when you inhabit your boredom, it becomes ecstatic.
yeah,
I have that phrase, ecstatic boredom. Sometimes you're at a party and you're bored out of your skull, and yet you can lean into that, and and there's another space that arises,
yeah.
and that can, you
That's
just
like,
let it be whatever it is, and it
yeah,
doesn't have to be entertaining, and
yeah,
it just is. Wow, that's a revelation enough,
yeah. That's like turn a breakdown into a breakthrough or turn a
Yeah,
rejection into a redirection.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So wow, this has been amazing. Two more and we're out of here. Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, Christian. What's it really all about for you?
uh, what's it?
Yeah, what's it? That's a good response question. You put it into the context you want. Whatever you want to define it is.
But I did like the introduction to your question. You have to both uh, show and hide at the same time. And if there's anything worth telling, is because you're not telling everything. I don't want to. I mean,
Yeah,
what there is to tell or show is unknowable and unshowable, and that's what you're telling and what you're showing should show.
yeah,
That there's something that you cannot wrap your mind around or grasp in any way that somehow gives itself to you,
yeah,
and that could be it. That's life itself. Is that we don't know what the hell it is, but it's given to us, and we and we are sort of uh, put them in a position to respond to that gift, so that it doesn't turn into a poison, because that's the alternative. Take it as a gift and give it back as a gift. Otherwise,
yeah,
you receive it, and you don't know what to do with this, and it poisons you.
yeah,
It's choiceless in a sense, but the choice is to accept it as choiceless, and therefore not you don't know the ins and outs, and you accept
yeah.
it as a gift, or it's given to you anyway, and you don't know what to do with it, and it poisons you.
But did you get that by the way your parents raised you or on your own?
Oh,
That
on my
what
own.
you on your own. But you know what Bob Dylan said, similar to what you said? He said, "Don't ever tell anyone everything you know." And see, when I meet somebody, like if I met you at a dinner party and we were talking and we went on like this for 2 hours, I would want to tell you everything I know and wanted to hear your reaction so it could go farther. But it's like, yeah, the whole point is that there's a lot of things I'm saying that aren't knowable, but it sure sounds like you know a lot to teach me. So that's why I cling on to this. So I'm going to do a bonus question because this is Bersani's Leo Bersani. He just a lit crit. He just died. His study of Mallarmé, the symbolist poet. He said the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. So I don't know about the word crises. I like the word sustains in that, but
Mm.
I don't know if that statement is applicable to everything. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Any comment?
You know what pops in my mind is something a lot more basic. Because I'm not sure I follow these kind of hand wringing about the status of literature, etc. I don't tend to go there. It is whatever it is. But the idea of crisis. I mean, it's so it's not an accident of life. It's the nature of life itself. And I'm reminded of a line in the Laurie Anderson song called it's about walking. It's when she says when you walk, you're falling and pulling yourself up every step. If walking is falling and then catching yourself from falling, that, that that's all that you're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
and it's only
That's you know what
so
that is.
crisis and crisis, and a response to crisis, response to crisis. That's all there is. That's the
Yeah,
crisis is not a crisis. It's normalcy itself.
yeah. It's normalcy. That's good because it's that is Finnegan's Wake. You fall down, you get back up. You fall down, get back up. That's the human condition.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. And you prove movement by walking. And you
Yeah,
prove life by living. And it's the same thing.
yeah, that's Louis Buñuel. Long live the living.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Thank you so much. What gives you the most optimism?
Uh, Actually, you know, by nature, I'm such a stark pessimist that whenever I wake up and go through the day and the world hasn't ended yet, I'm so grateful. Wow, it's so great. We still have a sort of civilized life, and I'm still healthy. It's because I expect the worst, and the worst never totally happens. So I don't expect things to last longer that way that very much. But every moment of reprieve is just I take it for what it's worth, and it does, I guess, hold the promise of maybe some other non non terrible or non depressive stuff can even happen the next moment. So that's the level of my optimism. It's from moment to moment.
Yeah. But it does again amaze me that you said that because you said I'm a stark pessimist. And
I say
so
it with a smile. You've noticed.
yeah, you say it with a smile, but again, it's like what's the underneath of that? Where did you get that? Because you see the world, you quote Nietzsche, you know these great thinkers, art and film and literature, and you see what they've depicted, but still you persevere with the smile. Why? How did you get that? What's the roots of that sensibility?
Hmm. Well, I guess it's an attitude to that gift of life that I was referring to. You take it in stride, or you stumble over yourself.
Yeah,
There is no choice. There's no neutral point, a third position, where you could decide, oh, which is right and wrong, and how do I evaluate? No, it's thrown at you, and you answer that service of the tennis ball, or
yeah,
you let it fall, and it becomes a much more boring, play.
yeah,
But then you play along with what is thrown at you. So I
yeah.
guess it's a playfulness at heart. You you
Play.
you
That's
you give credit to whatever is throwing you ball after ball. Okay, I'll play along. What else is there
yeah,
to do?
yeah.
Uh,
No, that's exactly when I asked Eric, could you tell me your philosophy of your life in one word after the word the? So like James Joyce would be the wake, and Frank Zappa would be the big note, just basically one word. And Eric goes, the playground. And I goes, what do you think your dad would say? And he goes, the playground, which is a great, that word play is, I find most McLuhan dazed, nights and days, that that's the key is that they're playful, that we're
I
trying to
completely
get
agree. I often come back, to that notion, and I think it's relatively recently that I realized its centrality to McLuhan, because the mechanical sense of play, that there has to be play in any kind
yeah,
of device or arrangement, and that play is what makes it cohere. That
yeah,
the space that distinguishes also joins, and of course that I think that's the what makes everything symbolic in that way. That something is at the same time given and not given, and the two are held together. That is something that is not wholly given, therefore allows what is given to be received as a gift. Uh, and that's existence itself. It is symbolic
yeah,
in that way. If you get that play, that is also the most serious thing there is. That it's the Buddhists talk about, in Mahamudra, they talk about reality being self-symbolic. Uh, the phenomenon of existence symbolizes itself, its own appearance. Appearance symbolizes its own appearance, and
yeah,
that is not a nihilistic statement.
yeah,
A joy that anything at all appears, and you go into the unfolding, and revealing implies there's a veil. It's a play of veils. And it's by having veils that you realize that there are things beyond the veils that are only uh, reveal themselves by display, and there's no place beyond these endless sequence and movements of veils.
yeah,
That's what there is, and it's enough, because
yeah,
it's never enough, and it's enough at the same time.
yeah. That's the McLuhan said the gap is where the action is.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
The
that's
in
yeah,
between,
the play.
yeah,
Yeah.
the play. So I'll close out with the McLuhan joke and a McLuhan line that I find applicable. The priest is trying to cross the Canadian border, and the custom officer says, "Father, what's in that flask?" And he goes, "Oh, it's water." And the custom officer says, "Let me see that." And he takes a swig, and he goes, "That's whiskey." And the priest goes, "It's a miracle." Yeah, I get all my best jokes from McLuhan. But this is the follow-up. He said communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. So I want to thank you, Christian, because I think what you communicated to me today was a lot of newness. It's stuff that I know, but it's also stuff I didn't know. So I've got to juggle it and go, look at my 4 pages of notes and try to decipher what I learned.
Wow. Yeah.
But I did learn a lot, and I really thank you. And I would love to do a whole salon with you on Charbonneau, and maybe you could bring in other people, or maybe it's just me and you. But
Yeah,
we'll
we have
figure
to
out.
bring in Elul experts,
Yeah,
you can't have one without the other, really, at this stage, at least,
right,
Yeah.
right. And you could figure out who you want to have. We could
Yeah.
have 4 people or 6 or whatever, but we'll
Mhm.
do it in the future and set up a date. But again, thank you so much. It's really been an honor and a joy. And even though I'm going to hit
Indeed.
the end broadcast button, I hope this dialogue never ends.
Yes.
It goes on forever and ever.
Yeah. The end is open ended. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.